Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and journalists and sports writers and sportscasters. I say that advisedly because this evening we are going to speak with somebody who's a friend of mine. He is a Sirius XM update anchor, a writer for New York Sport, nysportsday.com. My longtime Bronx buddy, Howie Carpin. Nice to see you, Howie.
We've done this a lot of times, and it's always a thrill to come back on with you on
It's a
Bronx
thrill.
Buzz.
Well, that's because as I just told our producer Anderson Peguero, you and me, we could sit here for 3 hours talking about this stuff. Anyway, I want to get right to it. This book that it's coming out now. When is this coming out?
On April 24th.
All right, it's coming out. This is how sports phone launched careers and broke new ground. People who are much younger than you and I will say, "Wait a minute, sports phone? What is that?" And you did a full book on it. What I am just blown away. First of all, let's start here. It is brilliant to find something that happened and write a story about something that was so significant that frankly nobody knows about. And so congratulations on that. But now I'm going to read this list of, this is only a sample list of all the people who worked at Sports Phone and were part of this incredible project. And then you're going to take it away and tell us all about it. So Gary Cohn, who's obviously one of the great sportscasters of all time, Steve Cangelosi, John Giannone, Don LaGreca, Bob Papa, Howie Rose, Kenny Albert, Joe Benigno, Ed Coleman, Jeff Garland. That was a surprise. That, of course, is the guy who was on Curb Your Enthusiasm all this time. Bill James, who is a brilliant historian of sports. Chris Mad Dog Russo, who is, of course, legendary in broadcasting. Dave Sims, Susan Waldman, I know who you still call friends. All of those people worked at Sports Phone. And now, of course, they've gone on, and there are many others, including Howie Carpin. What was Sports Phone? Tell people who don't know.
Well, first of all, let me clarify. That list contains people who were connected. They either worked there, or they were callers, or they had some connection
Okay,
to
that's
Sports
fair.
Phone. That was part. And let me just credit my co-author, Scott Orgera, who did a fabulous job writing his parts in the book, and he designed the format and the cover, and just a talented guy, a terrific writer, and he's great on computer design. And it was basically his idea, because we kind of it's kind of split up into two entities. One, the whole Sports Phone thing where people worked and called, and also how Sports Phone was kind of the pioneer to what we have today on your cell phones, access to scores, immediate access. And now let me go into what Sports Phone was.
Yes.
For the young people that don't realize, you could call up a number and get actual sports updates to the minute. When you called, we updated every 10 minutes the scores, or if there was news breaking, that was there as well. A lot of news stories during the day when there were no scores, but it was the access to the scores that nobody had. All you had was really the radio updates at every half hour, maybe on quarter two and a quarter after the hour, but there was no other access. There was no ESPN, ticker, none of that, no
It,
WFAN. That was your way to get the scores. And
it,
so many people, I didn't realize that so many people relied on it over the years.
it's just incredible to even conceive of it for people who now they go to their phone. You want to know what the Pirates and Cardinals are doing? I mean, in those days, as you said, you got to get lucky and get, like on WCBS radio, if they're running down all the scores, there was no way to get that information. Now, what years was this?
Well, it started in 72, but it actually took off in 75, and it lasted until about 2000. I worked there from 1980 to 1992. And on a personal level, I mean, that's what jump started my career. I worked at Sports Phone, and that's how I got started in sports media. So I've been in sports media since 1980 when I began at
Wow.
Sports Phone.
You're also an author of books as well. You've written several books, but you are one of the official scorers of Major League Baseball. And so I know it's a joy. We had this pleasure over the weekend to sit next to you at a ball game, and you can actually tell us, was it a hit or an error? Exactly what the heck is going on in the ball game. So let's just add that to your credit. But it's inconceivable to the modern era that none of that information was available. So what did you guys do? You sat in an office and I would say you had computers. I mean, how did you get the scores and have them available for sports phone?
Well, we used the phone. Believe it or not, we used to. Well, we had stringers set up at each game to call in every 10 minutes.
Wow.
We also made calls to places where we didn't have stringers, and that was especially prominent during like college basketball to get those scores in Oklahoma or Kansas and places like that. So it was a combination of things. So we had steady stringers in certain markets. For example, a guy named Carl Bean in Boston, he should rest in peace. He passed away. He would call in Red Sox and Patriots and Celtics and Bruins. And we had stringers in Detroit and Chicago where we had other sports phone offices. They had their own stringers at some of the games. So we had a network of stringers, and also we made phone calls to get updates from scores. So it was a constant process while the scores were going on of updating every 10 minutes. Now on NFL Sunday, we went to a 2-minute update schedule, which was wild because we had to bring in 4 anchors for each hour. You would work 15-minute shifts on the hour. You do one tape, which took a minute, and then you come out, you try and get your scores, and you go right back in.
I mean, you look at the ticker at the bottom of any NFL game, the thing is going constantly. Now, when somebody called, did they get a recording? Did they get one of you? And they said, like, hey, again, I'll use the Pirates and Cardinals. What's going on in the Pirates and Cardinals game? Or how did it work when you picked up the phone? What did you get?
You got the recording of whoever put that recording in until it changed, 10 minutes later. It used to be on a thing called a loop, where you'd have to wait for it. It was almost like Arlo Guthrie in that song. You had to wait for it to come around.
Yeah, coming around again.
Update,
Yeah.
right? But then they modernized it to where you dialed in a number and then you dialed in some codes and then you hit like I think an asterisk and gave you a cue beep. And when the beep was over, you went. Now, the tape was 59 seconds and change, but we had to say your name in the beginning, and sometimes we promoted another line where we had to move scores or had news. So you really ended up with about 51 seconds of score time reporting the scores. It was a trick to get in as many scores as you could to be legible, to hear it and understand what the numbers were. And we went fast, admit it.
Howie, it's just looking at the modern day, it's just incredible. Now we're recording this, and the only other person who's watching this recording is my producer, Anderson Peguero. Anderson is a big San Diego Chargers fan. He can't. I'm just telling you, he's not on with us, but he can't imagine trying to follow the San Diego Chargers from New York in those days when he would have to pick up the phone to find out what the score was. It's crazy.
It's remarkable. I mean, I found it remarkable when I started working there. I wasn't even really a caller before I started working there. And then, here I was working there and putting the scores on, and I was a sportscaster. I mean, it was a dream of mine to, be doing sports. And here I had my opportunity. I had no connections when I started in the business, and luckily got hired thanks to some, things that happened in my career. And, we took off from there, and then people got to know you. And I'll be honest with you, I was very flattered that people recognized me, when talking about it. And even some of my colleagues, I didn't realize that the impact that, we had on certain people,
Wow.
even in the business.
It is just incredible. Now, the writing of the book, did you remember all this off the top of your head? Or listen, I can't remember what I did in 1980, I promise you. Or did you have to go back and do some researching? Are there any tapes of anything that still exist? Or is it all just in the air of history?
Well, in the back of the book, we have pictures, but we didn't really find any audio from the past. At least I didn't have any audio. But most of the stories were, most of it was off the top. The people we interviewed had their own stories. it's
Wow.
just my stories. It's the people that work there and the
Right, right.
experiences they had. We tried to split it up. Scott, my co-author, worked on the other side of the business, the impact it had elsewhere, into the digital age with some of the competition, and that end of it. I worked on it from the sports phone end of it because I experienced that firsthand.
Could we do a call right now? Okay, here I am dialing 976-1313. Do you remember how to do it? Can you do it?
Yeah, Howie Carpin for Sports Phone, 976-2525 for more scores and breaking news. Then we go right into the scoreboard.
There you go.
And then
Uh,
it was the out cue was "Stay with us," which
that's
became a catchphrase.
so the book will be out, what'd you say, April 20
24th.
24th. And all sports fans should check it out because this is a piece of history. What about the writing of the book? I mean, did it flow easy? Was this one of those pulling teeth kind of experiences, or did you feel like, wow, I'm telling a story that people should hear?
No, it was very easy to write this stuff,
Really,
and the way my co-author formatted it, it's a very easy read. There's a lot in there. I mean, it's over 400 pages.
really
It's an easy read the way Scott formatted it, with separating the paragraphs and things like that, and the pictures that we put in there, those drawings, for the stories. We have there used to be a thing called the Quickie Quiz that we used to run as a promo twice a day, and the caller who got the first one with the answer, would get their name on sports phone. And Kenny Albert, that's his connection to the book. He was one of the most frequent callers when he was younger.
wow. Marv Albert's son.
Marv
Yeah,
Albert's son, who's now a good friend, and he wrote the foreword on the book. So we had a little section of Quickie Quiz tied into some of the stories with the sports phone personnel.
crazy. Last question. Howie, by the way, is going to be with us for both segments because we're going to talk baseball right after this and welcome the 2024 season as we do every year. A big moment that you remember reporting on Sports Phone, or they were all big moments because you reported everything.
Probably the day that Magic Johnson revealed he had AIDS.
Wow.
If you read the story in there, one of my colleagues, when we heard that Magic Johnson was giving a presser, one of my colleagues said that I actually guessed, off the top, that it was AIDS,
Wow,
and then
because
it
it was so
was.
big at that time.
And that was a very big story
Listen,
to hear.
Howie, we're going to take a short break. Then you and I are going to come back and do what we love to do, and that's talk baseball. We'll be right back.